Day 707. Something really weird is going on. I know that seems like an obvious thing to say, what with Stephen and Lisa starting to talk out loud and all, but that's actually mundane compared to the events of the past week. As I ended my last entry, I thought I heard a noise outside the RV. I lay there in silence for almost an hour, but nothing else happened, and I drifted off to sleep. The next morning, I got up and made eggs and bacon for breakfast. I should have mentioned before, though I honestly never really thought about it, but the food I've been getting has been from various grocery stores in the world, and it never expires. I wouldn't even be bringing this up, except for the fact that the milk I tried to drink with breakfast was sour. How it soured when nothing else is spoiled in the time I've been here is beyond me. But that would actually wind up being overshadowed by the next discovery. Stepping out into the morning light and taking in some fresh mountain air, my eyes fell on a Colorado State Highway Patrol car sitting just feet away. Now, I know for a fact that there were no other vehicles in the lot when I went inside the night before. As a matter of fact, over the past 2 years, I haven't seen any vehicles other than those at dealerships. I thought it was weird at first, but over time I just kind of accepted that humanity had been raptured with their cars. Standing there, staring at that black and silver car with lights on the roof, I wondered for the first time in a while if I really was the last person on Earth. I walked around it, inspecting every inch, looking for some sign it had been driven there. The doors were unlocked, and I found the keys in the ignition. There was a place for a computer, one of those systems the cops use to look you up when you've been pulled over, but the laptop was missing. The strangest thing was a coffee cup in one of the cup holders. The coffee itself was cold, but it still smelled relatively fresh. As I was looking at the back seat for any other clues, I heard Stephen scream from the RV. "Oh no! Lisa, come quick! Charlie's been arrested!" "I have not," I yelled back, hitting my head on the roof of the car as I turned to back out. "Charlie, what are you doing in the back of a patrol car? Are you drunk again?" Lisa was leaning out of the door of the motorhome as she yelled. Sighing, I climbed out of the patrol car and looked at their expressionless faces. "No, honey, I came out for some fresh air before we hit the road, and it was just kind of here." At this point, I was starting to regret coming outside at all. After a little more back and forth, we decided to leave well enough alone and get back on the road. There was nothing I could really use in the patrol car anyway, so leaving it there just seemed like the best thing. Moving out, we started our drive back east. I promised Lisa we would make our way to see her mother over the next couple of weeks, and I didn't want to break that promise again. Heading just a little further north, we jumped on Interstate 80. It would have been faster to take I-70, but I kind of wanted to sightsee a bit, and no one else objected. What I wasn't counting on as we drove was a dust storm that made driving impossible for several hours. We had barely made it into Nebraska, and everything went dark outside. The storm finally cleared up as the sun was starting to set, and since I didn't want to be driving much after dark, I brought the RV into a truck wash in North Platte. I'd never stopped in that town, and I didn't really know what to expect, but it was better than sitting on the side of the road for the night. We finished washing the motorhome just as the light faded, and everyone was ready to tuck in for the night when a noise broke the quiet of the evening. It was almost like an explosion coming from a group of warehouses a short distance away. I stared out the window into the darkness, hoping I was just hearing things. "Charlie, what was that?" Stephen's shaky voice broke through the quiet inside the RV. "I'm not sure, bud. It's probably nothing to worry about," I reassured him, hoping I sounded more calm than I felt. I must have sounded confident enough because within a few minutes, Stephen laid down in his makeshift bed on the booth and fell asleep, leaving me alone with my thoughts. After a few silent moments, I noticed a glow coming from around the spot the explosion must have been. It looked like a fire was burning, but I couldn't be sure where exactly it was. I wanted to just forget about it, go to sleep like Lisa, Stephen, and Kyle, but I couldn't shake the thought that someone might be over there. It didn't make much sense, but I felt this uncontrollable urge to check it out. I slipped on my shoes, grabbed a flashlight, and made my way as quiet as I could out the door, locking it behind me. The air was chillier than I expected as I crossed the parking lot, and I shivered as I reached the fence protecting the warehouses. The light from the truck wash was enough to see where I was going to that point, but I needed the flashlight to search for a way through. As I wandered down the fence, I found an opening where someone or something had torn a hole in it. The frayed metal was rusted, telling me it had been like that for a while, and I made my way through. Moving past some small buildings, I found myself in a courtyard of sorts. There was a little picnic area and a garden that had long since grown out of its barrier. The smell of smoke was now finding its way to my nose, and I moved further in, opening a door to one of the buildings and making my way inside. I shined my flashlight around the large space, but I didn't really even need it thanks to the orange glow about 40 feet in front of me. The fire itself was smaller than I expected, but it was still fairly large and it seemed to be growing slowly. I almost turned around, not wanting to have my odd existence end in a normal blaze of glory, but I noticed something strange sitting in the middle of the fire. Propping the door open, I moved closer, not sure I was seeing what I thought I was seeing. As I crept up to the burning pile of rubbish, I realized it was more than just some cardboard and steel. Mixed in with the broken containers and twisted racks was the mangled fuselage of a small plane. I couldn't really tell what part was what, and most of it seemed to be scrap at that point, but it was pretty clear it had fallen out of the sky recently. My first instinct was to grab the fire extinguisher off the wall and try to put out the blaze, but that proved useless. The fire was growing more intense as it spread to the boxes on the shelves, and I knew it was time to retreat. I made my way back outside and sat down at one of the benches near a smoking area to catch my breath. I was at a complete loss at that point as to what was happening. I felt like the world I had come to know was slowly collapsing in on itself. I don't know exactly how long I sat there, but the sky was starting to lighten as I stood up and walked back to the RV. Nothing really made sense, and even now I can't help but wonder if someone was on the plane or if it's somehow related to the patrol car. I found Kyle sitting next to the door, wanting to be let out for his morning potty break. He's the only one who hasn't spoken up yet, and I feel like that has more to do with how I see him as a pet more than anything. When we found him, I thought the conversation with Lisa about adopting him was nothing more than my imagination, so he became our de facto family dog. I stood there while he did his business, and then made my way inside to try to catch a couple of hours of sleep. I honestly just wanted to pretend the whole night had been nothing more than a dream, and put everything that happened in the prior 24 hours behind me. After a short nap, I started the day with some coffee and eggs before hitting the road. I didn't bother to tell Stephen or Lisa what I saw because I was starting to doubt that I'd even seen it at all. Maybe it just looked like a plane. The next couple of days were pretty quiet. We made our way along I-80, stopping for the occasional touristy spot and for gas and bathroom breaks. I was starting to forget about the events from earlier in the week when we hit a snag in Chicago. Coming through the Windy City, I was planning to branch onto I-90 and knock out Indiana before stopping for the night. Before we could even get close to the border, though, the engine started to sputter. I was trying to ease it along, but it wasn't having any of it. When smoke started rising into the cab, I knew something was very wrong. I brought the RV to a stop and got everyone out as flames started shooting up from the engine compartment. Thankfully, I grabbed the extinguisher in the chaos of the moment, and this time I was able to actually put out the fire. After everything cooled down, I surveyed the damage and tried to lay it out as gently as I could to the group. There's some melted belts, a lot of wiring gone. Basically, we aren't moving anywhere for a while. What are we going to do? That's our home, Stephen said. For now, I'm going to need some time to really dig in and figure out what all we need. There should be an RV dealer around here somewhere. Hopefully they'll have what we need to get back up and running. Until further notice, we don't have power, so no lights and no charging anything. I could feel the disappointment as they collectively sighed and made their way back inside. I got to work on the engine, diving into the bowels of the RV for the first time in a while. We hadn't really had any issues with it to this point, and I wasn't really sure at the time what could have happened. There hadn't been any issues when I did the maintenance, but then I found the cause. Several wires had clearly been chewed on at some point, the covers being stripped away. If it had been 2 years prior, I would have blamed squirrels, but there weren't any of those around anymore. It just didn't make sense. I made a list of everything I could find wrong and the parts I would need to get the RV back up and running, and set off for a dealership Lisa found on one of the maps. It only took me about an hour to find it, and another couple of hours to gather the parts and load them into a wagon that was conveniently sitting in the shop. As I made my way back, I pondered again how it was possible to have what looked like chew marks from a squirrel on the wires. I was in the middle of imagining Stephen growing a set of rodent teeth just to chew through them when I heard a siren. Looking around, I tried to figure out where it was coming from. There were dozens of buildings around the freeway, and the sound was reverberating off of all of them. I half expected an ambulance to come rolling around the corner at any minute. As I turned around in circles trying to pinpoint the source, my head started to hurt like never before. I closed my eyes tight, trying to make it stop, and when I opened them again, I nearly had a heart attack. For a split second, no more than the blink of an eye, I saw traffic all around me on the freeway and heard the sounds of a bustling downtown Chicago. I thought I was going to be run over by a truck that was barreling toward me, its horn blazing, before everything went silent once more. Dragging the wagon as fast as I could, I made my way back to the RV. I was half expecting it to be gone, and a wave of relief washed over me when I saw it. Lisa and Stephen both screamed as I came rushing through the door, and Kyle started audibly barking like a dog. I hugged all of them, reminded Kyle he was a stegosaurus, and explained everything that I had seen over the course of the week. After I finished, Lisa told me she had heard some odd sounds one morning as well, saying it sounded like birds for a couple of seconds before getting quiet again. I wanted to just get the RV fixed and get moving, but it was dark outside and I didn't want to work on it that late. We all laid down for the night, and I had one of the worst nights of sleep I can remember having since this whole thing started. And that takes us to today. I was actually able to get the repairs done quicker than I expected, and we were able to get moving this afternoon. We made it into Indiana before stopping for the night at a rest stop. I've been laying here thinking about everything and trying to figure out exactly what happened. It's almost like I was briefly sent back to a world with people. But how is that even possible? For now, all I can do is wonder. There was one thing Stephen said that might be cause for concern, though I don't know if I believe him or not. Either way, I want to write it down in case I forget later. He told me that he's been seeing a man in a suit from time to time, standing off in the distance at different stops. He said the man seemed to be watching us, and that the sightings had been more frequent in the past couple of weeks. I haven't seen anyone else, so I'm not really sure what to think. But given recent events, I can't really rule anything out.